over the years, we've had some excellent and educational overclocking battles with my friend Nemesis. JayzTwoCents. And guy who likes boats. Do a quote.
I like boats!
Yeah. For example, some of these moments.
But Steve said in his video that if I don't have time for this, then he's the motherfucking father of time.
Well, Jay, if you don't have enough time for this, you can call me motherfucking Father Time, because I'll make time all day to beat your scores.
Well, to that I say, if Steve is the father of time, then I am the mother of invention.
I like hanging out with Jay, and last year he asked us for some help and some guidance on setting up his test setup for GP reviews. We bought some plane tickets and we flew out there to Jay's brand new studio, which is awesome. There's a separate video if you want to see what that looks like. And like every time we're together, the usual chaos ensued. What do you want to do for your actual power testing, like the stuff you show for your charts? Are you doing anything?
How about heaven? No. And that's where we end it for the day. Let that be a lesson. If you ever want to know how to make Steve go away, just mention heaven.
Jay specifically texted me last year to say he wants to find a middle ground between his prior reviews and ours. So that's what we're here for. The goal is not to change his stuff into our stuff, but to basically just make ourselves available to Jay and his team and Phil. Part of making this fun meant I also brought Patrick out with me, and of course Vitaly to film, and we had moments like this.
Do you guys make it a habit of uninstalling the stuff you know you don't use?
Like you mentioned, OneDrive is really the one that like will pop up and be annoying and actually interact with it. The rest of this is just like, I look at this menu and I see the weather app in there and I get pissed off and uninstall it.
Okay.
Now, today Patrick and I will take turns on a few things. So Patrick will work on Windows and operating system environment setup. On my side, I'll handle BIOS setup, general guidance of the questions, the variable elimination. That's a lot of what I do here at GN, and educating the team on basics of PresentMon. We'll also look over some of GN's prior research on test duration and paths, but the big one that Jay wants to learn today is how to integrate some form of 1% and 0.1% lows, or minimally some percentile numbers. This is a huge step in the right direction. This is something that we started really focusing on in probably about 2012 or so with the lows, and then we've really kind of iterated on that over the years. So there's been a lot of questions from you all in the audience about the specifics of lows and percentiles and kind of how that's done. So Patrick and I have a section here where we answer those same questions for Jay, and hopefully it helps some of you all. All right, so again, there's like 8 to 10 hours of footage of this. We're just gonna do the highlights here. Hopefully it's fun for you. Maybe you learn something, and I get some behind the scenes for both of us. And again, Jay's been really making some good ground here in the last couple months especially, and he's been extremely clear with his audience. He's been communicating what they're trying to do, and he's been executing on it slowly, which is good. That's how you keep it achievable and prevent it from running away from you, which is something I personally have challenges with testing. It's too much sometimes and we expand too much. We gotta narrow the scope. So he's been doing a good job of that. But anyway, let's get into the chaos with Jay. Before that, this video is brought to you by Thermal Grizzly and their new Duronaut thermal paste. Thermal Grizzly claims its Duronaut paste is intended for long-term stability and endurance, focusing on paste longevity in addition to the usual performance focus. Thermal Grizzly's Duronaut paste comes with applicators and spreaders, and ships in numerous tube sizes, aiming to provide a high-end paste for PC builds and daily driven overclocks by enthusiasts. Learn more at the link in the description below.
I think we started this conversation this summer, a
Yeah.
long time ago, but I said I want to provide more meaningful analytical data than I do now. But I do not have the manpower or the desire to go as deep as GN does.
Sure.
Like I feel like there's a huge middle ground there, and somewhere around in the middle is where I want my gauge to sort of land.
Yeah, so that's going to be what we're trying to figure out is, I was reading through the comments on your preparing or for arrival video, and a lot of people really interested in power, which is cool, like idle power, and that's just pretty overall easy to do with the PMDs that you have. And then I did see comments that were like, Jay, please don't make super dry 40-minute, GN reviews.
I already make super dry 40-minute videos about other crap, so why can't it be about hardware?
So we'll figure out like, what's the goal, and then do as much test setup as we can, methodology. I was telling Jay before we started that I'm gonna basically as we go through the checklist today, I'm gonna try and turn those into SOPs for you.
Yeah.
And then Patrick has come out as well from my team. Patrick does bench setup for Windows and the initial assembly of the system?
That's what I'm really interested in, seeing what you guys do with the Windows installs. So we took our old drives out, we labeled them so we know where they came from. They're set aside. There are fresh drives in there. Right now we've got the installation media ready to go for you. But I'm kind of curious as to, and obviously we'll talk about this, is what that process looks like in just preparing the bench outside of just a vanilla Windows install.
Yeah. So that's what you're going to help with.
I'm here as an extra set of hands and to help you remember all the steps that we do every day and don't think about.
Because let's not forget, I'm trying to ask him to take his 16 years of experience and condense it into a useful one-day
12
project.
hours, go!
That's the challenge.
Yeah, 1 year per 45 minutes. That's what we're shooting for.
You know, and it's probably going to be, I think, difficult from your perspective to kind of, okay, what can we sort of, is not that important today, what's the important bits to cover? But ideally, I'm hoping this allows me to now start going down my own rabbit hole of generating my own methodologies that still have a lot more meaning than they do today. Is there a system you prefer first? Because we have AM5, we have the 1851 and 1700.
So these are 2 of your benches, I guess?
And the AM4s, we're still waiting on that power supply like I told you.
So yeah, I guess broad question. So what is going to be the system for testing GPUs and what?
I think it needs to be the 9800X3D.
Okay.
Right? If we're trying to remove any sort of CPU bound, I think 9800X3D is what we need to use as our testing platform for GPU specifically.
Okay.
And that is pre-installed on this guy right now.
And I think you'd been wondering earlier, like, is it going to be a discrete platform, like this is the GPU bench and then these are the CPU benches?
Yeah, so that was something I actually thought of yesterday. I went, well, if we're going to have a dedicated GPU bench, that technically would be a 5th bench that I need to have ready. Because I want to have AM4, 5, 1700, and 1851. But then I think the GPU testing platform should remain separate from any of the GPU stuff. Otherwise, the OS could probably start getting cluttered.
Yes. So in terms of, one of the things you've said is you want to be somewhere between us and where you are now. So I guess sort of big picture, what does that sort of mean to you?
So I don't show any of the percent lows. Mostly because I just had never really investigated the best way to accurately get that number. Because I know that's kind of a rolling average. Right, so the percent lows.
Depends, I guess, what you're...
Yeah, so if you like incorporate like Afterburner with Hardware Info 64, I noticed that there's a lot of weird nuances to get that 1% low, 1.1% low to populate. And I feel like the number moves and fluctuates so much based on how long you're running the test. Like, I'm curious as to what just the best practices are on getting a solid run that's going to be indicative of what the real 1% lows are.
I'm going to take notes while we're talking, so I'm not texting and ignoring you. I'm going to write down, so we need to spend some time on percent lows.
Right.
What else? What are the other?
The monitoring utilities that you think are trustworthy.
Okay. So that we can definitely...
Because I also know if I'm running, say, Hardware Info 64, and then I've got Afterburner going, I know the more things polling for information can affect the overall performance or the perceived performance.
Especially CPU.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's definitely true. So percent low is going to be, it sounds like, important for you. Monitoring utilities, that's software.
Run consistency.
Yeah, run consistency, benchmark area, bench settings. I'll write down a note for power.
The power stuff's been fun to look at. Like I said, I mean, like I used to work in energy, so I never really looked at any of it outside of just whatever was being reported back software-wise, but it's kind of fun to go looking at this stuff on a hardware level.
Yeah, it's like, I like hardware tools because they normally don't lie. They can, but they normally don't. Let's focus on maybe GPU because 50 series is coming up.
Yeah.
So for GPU benches, what was your most recent test system? 9800X3D?
No, we were running 14.9.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So just to sort of recap on the benches, though, as you requested, they're all the same PSU, they're all the same drive, they're all the same RAM. Both. It is Crucial Pro 6400 CL36, I believe, not the fastest subtimings, but it was the set of RAM that we had that also has full validation for Expo and XMP.
Okay.
So that way we don't. The only variance obviously is our AM4 rig, which has DDR4 in it.
Yeah. So we'll try to get stability on 6400 with the 9800X3D at 1:1, and if not, we'll drop to 6000 for that bench.
Yeah.
So that's going to be your GPU bench?
Yeah, that'll now be dubbed the GPU bench. In fact, I need to
What
Sticker
speed
off
was
here.
the RAM again?
6400. The next step of this process is going to be walking Jay through all the different Windows options. So power plans, security features, things like that. And the reason is to figure out what to turn on or off based on what he's trying to achieve. So with Windows, for example, you can kind of lean into an ultra clean test environment that's really easy to replicate data, or you could go for more of the user experience, but you have to eat some time costs sometimes to rerun things if, say, Windows Firewall does something in the background. So just like the rest of this, we're going to ask questions. We'll let him choose if we think both options are fine, as long as you kind of can make the defense for why you chose it. And then after he chooses one, we'll tell him what we do and explain why. We're not here to choose them. We're here to guide the choice so that he can begin building a methodology. So here's that section. Okay, so let's start with Windows, because then everything else branches from that.
Yeah, so we got the latest installer for you, so hopefully there shouldn't be too many updates.
Okay.
So Patrick, I'll let you drive. I mean, it's the
All
same.
right. Do we want to do
Treat Jay's
that?
bench like our bench.
Okay. Do we want to do that on the
a couple right there. And if you need a place to put your laptop, you can roll that out too.
fancy?
It's about working lazier, not smarter. Sounds like the name of the game mostly is just trying to account for as many errors up front. Obviously.
Yeah, machine and human.
Yeah.
So
I know, I saw Patrick looking at it like, why is there partitions on this if it's a new drive?
Are you okay with that stuff getting blown away? The
Yeah,
stuff that's
yeah,
on there? Okay.
we're literally exploding the old way today. It doesn't exist anymore.
Okay.
It's
Well-
scorched earth day for the test benches.
So the crucial drives, these are the ones you want to use for the.
Yeah, the T500.
Okay, gotcha. So Jay, what board is this?
That's the Tai Chi.
Okay.
XA70E Tai Chi.
Okay, gotcha. It looked fancy, so I assumed. But I appreciate the. I always forget the bypassing that.
Like,
part.
no matter how
Oh,
many
yeah.
times we do it, I
Setup.
still never remember it.
Yeah, I can't either.
So this is on setup with all the prompts. We're saying no to everything.
Yeah, they change those prompts.
You have to be
and-
careful because sometimes they'll change it to default the other way.
So we can probably go ahead and connect to internet now and just let it, percolate.
Wireless isn't even showing up.
Oh, I might need a driver for it.
Yeah.
Driver.
Oh yeah. I can.
We
I
can just
can-
grab an Ethernet. I mean, I've just been too lazy to plug it in.
That's another thing I would do is only Ethernet for everything.
Can we get 2 Ethernet cables? Do we have any of the Cat 6 ones fully
Server room.
ended?
Yeah, a lot of this.
I went through the effort to make these. I'm going to use these.
Same thing with Ethernet as everything else in the hardware, just like fully controlling everything.
If you can see the Ethernet, it's right there on the wall there.
And that's one of the things we're not going to be able to really deep dive into today. CPU bench setup is really nuanced. I don't know, when I visited Wendell recently, I helped him kind of clean and organize the studio. And we looked around the whole thing and the whole office. At the end of it, it was like, okay, I think in about 12 hours, I can do this corner really well. I'm going to do this corner really well.
Yeah.
So that's what we're going to do today. This is the corner we're doing really
Yeah.
well. In terms of settings, we want to start with security maybe and VBS and all that stuff. So where do you want to be on, and you should probably do the same for CPU and GPU benches, security settings. So you have Windows Firewall, VBS, a couple other things. I start with Firewall. The pros and cons, before giving you all of our, some of my choices, but pros and cons of Firewall on. So Firewall on is more representative of a user experience where, let's say there is a problem, especially CPU testing, where maybe you're testing a lower end CPU and there's some behavior where the firewall legitimately impacts its performance. You'll capture that with it on.
Right.
Right. So that's the upside. The downside is you might have more run-to-run inconsistency where every now and then you're going to look at data and be like, this doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
I just got to redo it. And you might not be able to say this was the firewall. You probably just won't even know.
Yeah, because you can't really measure the firewall impact.
Not in a reliable way. I mean, you could do A/B testing, but it's just that's not what you're trying to do. So, yeah, it's basically do you want consistency for sort of process control, which is more of it benefits you and your human efficiency and stuff like that, or do you want to take the sort of occasional potential variance in the results, which you'll have to identify the variance and then you'll have to reconcile it somehow, rerunning it or whatever.
Right.
That doesn't happen all the time, right? This isn't every time, but but the benefit of it being representing the user scenario. Firewall setting, what do you want to do?
I say we leave it off.
Yeah, I was gonna say lean towards less secure, less representative of the default settings, but more towards consistency of results from the hardware.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because it's a hardware.
And isolating the hardware a little more.
Okay. And that's what I want to do today is like, I'm going to try my best to just present, but if I think both options are okay, as long as you can defend the choice,
Right.
then I'll present both of them and you can just make a choice and then I'll write it down. And we test the firewall on and we just eat the cost if there's variance and just run it. Yeah, I mean, it's just, we do a lot of reruns for consistency and it's just part of our process.
Right.
The notes that I have in order, I'm turning off fast startup next.
Okay.
The Windows key is turned off
Well,
on
that's-
this keyboard.
And for some of that too,
Is it?
Patrick,
Look, those are NZXT keyboards and they're complete junk. They're the only ones we have right now.
real-time protection, did you do anything?
I didn't touch it. That's,
We usually
that's up
turn
to you
off
guys.
real-time protection
Okay.
too.
So we can.
And that's one you're going to have to check consistently
Every
because it
single
comes
time.
back on.
Yeah.
So, and this is where I want to make sure you're a little careful with the notes I'm taking today, because, like, if I'm doing kind of setup, but this is it, but it's not actual. I'm about to run a GPU test.
Yeah.
Then that's something you're going to need to remember is real-time protection again.
I think next would probably be power plan.
Okay, so power plan. Yeah, your options I guess are basically balanced or high performance. Do you have a preference?
Go with high performance except for core parking CPUs.
Okay, so we'll do that for the GPU bench then, is high
Yeah.
performance. Well, what's next?
The reason I was in this menu is because when you go to the power options menu in this control panel, it'll give you this choose what the power button does menu and change settings that are currently unavailable. I've been turning off fast startup on all of the benches that we run. That just,
Yeah.
yeah, it makes shutdown do what you would expect it
Right.
to
Actually
do.
shut
rather
down
than-
and not store it all in RAM.
Yeah.
And do you want that disabled, you guys?
Yes.
Jay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. I feel every boot should be a fresh,
Yeah,
everything's loaded from scratch boot.
I definitely agree with that.
Next one, I have a step here for installing and licensing hardware info. Yeah, it's a good quick check just to see if the lane count is right on the GPU.
So it is running at X16 right now?
Yeah. So user account control is another thing that I don't think should affect performance, but it'll affect the pop-ups. Do you want to run this program?
It's funny. I personally disable it always.
Uh-huh.
Jay just clicks yes on every single one and then gets annoyed
Oh,
every time
man.
it pops up.
So would
And
you
I'm
like
I'm
a
more of the
consistent
philosophy
policy
of,
for?
I'm just gonna change
Okay,
the
we'll make Phil happy with this one. We'll disable it.
Okay.
Okay.
I felt judged by Steve right there with the, oh no.
The first thing I thought of was how many hours of Jay's life have been spent
That's my reasoning.
clicking ignore on this?
I try not to think about the hours of my life I have wasted doing various things. I might not have gray hair right now if I could have some of that time back.
And then what next? What's the next decision point?
I'm installing Firefox. If you guys want to use a different browser than Edge, do you care about that? Do you want to use the built-in browser?
We've only ever just used Edge because it's already there. Do you have a philosophy behind Firefox or just
Not
preference?
really. We just hate Microsoft.
Next would be to what degree you guys would want to leave apps and widgets and stuff around.
I like to make it as clutter-free as possible. Things that I know like to start up and do things in the background, like OneDrive. We like to, X that.
Yep.
Okay.
Microsoft Clipchamp.
Is that for the screenshot
That's
stuff?
their new Windows Movie Maker.
Okay, get rid of that.
Microsoft News.
Yeah, get rid of that. Get rid of OneDrive, obviously.
Microsoft To Do.
Yeah, get rid of it.
Teams.
Never need it on that machine.
Notepad. I'm assuming you want to.
Keep that.
Force them to keep that. That's not an option.
Outlook.
Yeah, get rid of it.
Power Automate.
Yeah, get rid of it.
Snipping tool. Okay, I hit yes without reading. Whatever. Snipping tool.
You've made too many-
It's going to reinstall it all back on.
Yeah, I know.
It looks like you've made a mistake.
Oops.
We've reinstalled all of these for you.
Do you guys make it a habit of uninstalling the stuff you know you don't use?
Like you mentioned, OneDrive is really the one that will pop up and be annoying and actually interact with it. The rest of this is just I look at this menu and I see the weather app in there and I get pissed off and uninstall it.
Okay.
What's next?
My note is to check for Windows updates, install all the most recent updates, and then pause for as long as possible. So I think the questions there are, sometimes you'll get an optional Windows update, and also, is that how you want to handle pausing the updates, or is there some other way that you want to?
So you're saying going into a testing period, you'll bring everything fully up to date, and then if it's a version change, you regress. You do all your regression testing as part of the testing suite.
If there's a version change, we just make sure everything's on the same version, whether that's new or old. We'd never cross versions.
Okay.
So
whatever is on those charts are on that same version that you tested.
yeah.
I think we will avoid previews
Okay.
on our philosophy with that. And then, yeah, probably the same thing. Bring it up to date and then pause.
Okay.
Because you can usually pause, how many weeks is it? 5 weeks?
5 weeks.
Yeah.
The Windows graphics menu should have a couple options in it. We don't run HDR monitors, so we don't ever have to worry about that.
We would keep HDR off in the OS, which would also keep it off in the game.
There's 3 options in this menu. One is variable refresh rate, which you've already said that you're turning off
Right.
G-Sync for this stuff. So I think NVIDIA, if you turn it off here, it may take the option away from the Windows menu.
Yeah,
but,
it's
Probably only on a restart, too.
That's also probably true. So yeah, I mean, we're disabling G-Sync as well. And
Yeah.
we're
We always
rebooting
do it at the
eventually.
driver level.
You like the keyboard, huh?
Well,
It's
Pat-
a rental, dude.
Patrick
Don't
knows.
break it.
Oh yeah, don't hurt it. I gotta
You gotta
get
package it correctly.
I gotta return the rental keyboard.
No, Patrick knows how I feel about keyboards without a numpad at a test bench. So the one downside is I do not know ASRock BIOS really at all. I don't use ASRock, so I'll do my best here. But
And I didn't check if it's up to date. So if you
we should do that first. Is this like new and out of
It's
box?
out of the box BIOS.
Yeah, it probably needs a BIOS update. 870 or 670? 870. Okay.
it's vintage.
There we go. Okay, cool. Cinebench is on here, I guess.
It's in the downloads folder.
I guess it's pulling like GPU drivers or something, but that doesn't matter right now. So we'll just run as is first and then go back into BIOS. Yeah, so see our highest clock here, single core, is 5225. So when I'm tuning these,
okay.
one of the things I do is for our CPU reviews, I do frequency logging. So we log the single core and the all core frequency. Part of that's for validation to make sure that the thing they're claiming is true. The other part is I now have a record of like where's the CPU I have perform. And so I checked that, and then I didn't have to check that again for our GPU bench setup because I already had the data. And then now I know, okay, like my goal is I'm shooting over this ideally. So I'd like to be better than stock. And then all core, we're seeing 5225, 5200. This gets back to the like, why is it so important to control the clocks? Because we just saw these change like 50 megahertz in 20 seconds. So first thing's gonna be fan speeds, C states, anything to do with power, we're gonna lock down. And again, on a CPU is kind of a different story. Like I leave a lot of that alone.
Yeah.
So to run through it really quick, the main things that we've locked in are disabling C states, maxing out PPT, TDC, and EDC, disabling integrated graphics, locking the voltage to 1.28, the frequency all core to 5300. Again, you might be able to get 54, but you can play around with that if you really want to. This is totally, to me, like this is totally acceptable for reviews. I did drop the memory to 6,000 because it was having those issues. At the same time, because we did that, these timings very likely can be tightened.
Yeah.
So all I'm doing right now is I'm setting it up where it's like, it may not be the ideal best performing numbers, but what it is the same and usable. And so then if you guys want to screw with it, you've got room, but you have the foundation where it's usable. And then uClock equals memclock is important. 2000 megahertz Infinity Fabric is locked. The VDIM, VDDQ is all set. Fan speeds are maxed. And I think that's pretty much all the major stuff. So then Patrick, I'll hand off to you for a minute to do driver stuff.
Yeah, okay. I think our absolute baseline is just get device manager to not have yellow exclamation points in it.
Gotcha.
I mean, a lot of stuff will supply a Windows driver at this point. so it won't necessarily show up as missing. I think GPU and chipset are the ones that are really important, but generally speaking, like if there's a yellow exclamation point, it makes us nervous. So
Yeah.
we want it to go away.
Yeah.
It's also just sort of proper,
Yeah.
so to speak.
Yeah,
Training that RAM again.
it is.
Oh yeah, I guess because he manually put them in, it has to go, oh, let's run it again.
Have you done anything I should write down for them?
Just
download all the drivers?
I'm downloading. I've installed all the stuff I got off of the motherboard page, except for the NPU driver. I'm going to do chipset and then DDU and do graphics,
Yeah.
and then I'll see if anything's missing.
Main takeaway I got from Patrick on this one is reconcile all of the exclamation points in device manager.
Yep.
That was Steve's directive to me years ago.
DDU, we always set up for safe boot also, safe
Yeah.
mode.
So it'll
No,
prompt
there
DDU.
should be there's a setting in Windows too where you have to disable the automatic installer,
Yeah.
right, of the graphics driver. Otherwise,
You can do it in DDU.
Yep.
oh, you can. Okay.
DDU can change that setting for you.
So
Okay, cool.
we also, as when we're running DDU, this is like where it's handy to just be able to yank the network cable.
Uh-huh.
So
Oh, yeah.
because we're not using
Then
wireless.
it won't be able to do it.
Yeah.
So that's actually an important, really important part of our process is like, we do this for CPUs too. Every time, even if in a CPU bench, we keep the same GPU, every time the CPU changes, like I said earlier, we DDU, we install the GPU driver again. Yeah, with this, anytime we're using DDU, the network cable's disconnected until it's done. My step after this is always G-Sync, which he's doing now. So that's definitely next. And when you have an AMD card in there, if this monitor supports FreeSync, you'll want to disable FreeSync. PresentMon, I guess,
Okay.
and a game of some kind.
So we have
handle
to
that, or-
install Steam
Yeah.
to get something
Get you
going on
logged in
there.
and everything.
Do you want to do that?
Yeah.
Let you take over. Does it matter if your JayzTwoCents account name shows?
Nope, that's fine.
Okay.
That's a public facing work.
But what if they guess that's your username? So now we're getting into the benchmarking software section. Really important note here, what we're showing Jay and what we're including in the video is not what GN does. So we use PresentMon, which is what we're showing, but GN uses the command line version of PresentMon, and then we've also built a lot of our own internal only software that handles things like data management, data export, data analysis, and a whole bunch of other stuff that we're not going to get into today. So what we're doing is we're showing Jay a significant improvement over the tools he was using, which is PresentMon with the user interface. And I still use that sometimes for doing rapid checks of new games to understand how they behave. But for the actual collection of data, we use command line. Now, the outcome is the same. I've tested them A/B, and they produce the same results. It's just kind of how you interact with it as an end user. And for us, command line's easier, but for someone who hasn't built all those processes yet, the user interface, it's awesome. Intel has done a really good job overhauling this. And you can go download it too as an end user, and we'd encourage it. It's a really good tool. So that's what we're going to look at. And even the stuff, we talked with Jay for hours about this. So even that has been heavily cut down. So you are not seeing what is representative of the benchmarking process as it was completed. You're seeing some of the steps as we walk Jay's team through using PresentMon. PresentMon is a tool that has existed for a long time at this point. It was originally a Microsoft, Intel, and some other company collaboration. It's open source. It is basically maintained by Intel at this point, but there's nothing to be concerned about with the way they're testing, and it is all open on GitHub. So I'm going to set you up with this tool. It will allow you to hit a hotkey to capture when you're running the bench, and then capture duration is going to matter. So this is how long you're doing your capture before it terminates. Hotkey is self-explanatory, and
Do you have a philosophy behind the duration?
it does just depend on the game, but like a minute is pretty safe as sort of a minimum. You can come down in some tests.
That actually makes me feel pretty good, actually, that a minute is still considered usable. Because, I mean, we were running some benches that were taking, 4 or 5 minutes a test, and then doing it multiple times. That obviously adds up.
What matters, it's all like the reality of this that I think a lot of people don't really can't understand unless they're in the environment is like it's all trade-offs, and what matters more is going to be more passes, so you can eliminate bad ones, than longer passes.
Right.
And so, like, if we think about it, I mean, if my team runs 3 resolutions at 4 passes on 10 games on 26 GPUs, we're at 3,120 passes. if that's all 1 minute each without overhead between everything, you know, then
52 hours.
yeah, and that's without all the between, right?
Yep.
So that's kind of
And that's assuming everything went perfect and you didn't have to troubleshoot or identify
rerun,
variants.
yeah. And so it's a great representation of like, well, but why a minute? You know, it's well because our research has proven in the tests we do that 20 minutes is no different than 1 minute. And so, yeah.
We need to clip that from this video so that when we get into the 50 series and I start talking about the new methodologies, I feel like Steve said, 1 minute. No.
I'm going to jump back in here in VoiceOver too for some additional background because there are situations where it can matter. So the situations include VRAM saturation. So this testing is reserved for things where you're not saturating the VRAM completely. When we have a low VRAM card that is bumping up against that limit, we run that longer and then we show in games. We did that with the 5070 recently. We showed examples of it getting saturated just within a couple minutes. Another example of where we do test for longer is in situations like STAP'em, so AMD STAP'em, where there's skin temperature aware power management. So there are exceptions to this, but this video is not about that. This topic of benchmark duration on its own would be like a couple hours long to really deep dive it. So just be aware of that. There's a couple of cool things with PresentMon. Overlay is a little different from how you're going to actually use it for logging results if you do use this. But what it's showing under this preset thing, these are different stats that show up.
Okay.
You can also customize it. So this is power and temperature. This is GPU focus, which they're showing.
I like this just frame times too.
Yeah. So this is the presented FPS average, presented FPS 1%, GPU temperature, frequency, all that stuff.
So you'll use the overlay if you're doing like research, but you use command bit prompt
for logging.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is an example of we call it research. I mean, you can see it right here. Whenever we add a new title, this is Dragon's Dogma. I'm in a bunch of different areas, so I label them things: town, Melv test run, and these tests are going to be at all different durations. This is me trying to identify how variable is this game, what area do I want to use. So like the game was ranging from 75 to 166 FPS, depending on area. Mm-hmm. And then one of the things I do is I run PresentMon with the overlay for parts of this, just to visually figure out like, okay, this area is really CPU heavy, this area is really GPU heavy, so I don't waste a ton of time by picking a spot. You swap 5 GPUs and you're like, fuck, they're all the same frame rate, you know, like CPU bound. We'll do a 60-second capture. The default hotkey is Control-Shift-K. That's fine.
For capture.
Yeah. So in theory, it should just be capturing right now. I'm going to give it 1 minute, and we'll see if it worked. It just gave us 2 files. One's going to look like a complete mess because it needs.
That's just our CSV.
It's a CSV. Yep. Got the application ID, process ID, swap chain address, just like a technical thing. Frame time is what we care about. Stuff, all that stuff. The stats file, summary stats, I just discovered the other day when I was trying to figure out what I could like bring to you. Spitting out are the duration of the run.
Gotcha.
The total count of frames, the average FPS, which is frame time based, the minimum FPS, which I would personally advise against using. It's like way too variable. First percentile, which I'll let Patrick help explain in a second. 5th percentile, maximum FPS, which is useless for the same reason as minimum.
Spikes and dips, right?
Yeah, and then animation error, which is not a finished feature yet and is kind of buggy, so you can ignore this for now. And again, this is one of those places where at GN we don't use this file, but I was looking for something I could find in the PresentMon tool that would be easy for Jay to implement initially, and then we can continue to work with them to iterate on it. But again, we were doing all this inside of one day. So for GN, what we do is we have our own tools that rip through the CSVs, the base CSVs, and then we figure out the data from there. And we also don't use these percentile numbers that PresentMon is presenting. We do 1% and 0.1% lows, and we're going to get into that right now with Patrick and me back then explaining it.
The way we calculate our lows is different than this, which is partly a legacy of like it was a decision that we made a long time ago, and then we also believe in that method of doing it. But there's multiple ways to do it. So
yeah, and we'll explain them for you too.
Percentiles would be, first percentile is saying that you've got, all of these are done on the full list of frame times. So average FPS is full list of frame times, and then we're averaging them all together and then turning that into a frames per second number. First percentile would be we're taking the full list of frame times. 99% of the frame times in this list are better than this number.
Than that.
And then
So that just means the bottom 1% is below that number in some range.
yeah. So then for fifth percentile, it would be the same thing where we're going down the full list of frame times, and we're getting to a number, and we're saying 95% of. God, I'm gonna flip this around
No, you're
backwards.
right.
No, I think you're right. Yeah, 95% of the frames are going to be 237 or better.
Or better, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you were right.
So and then you're taking that frame time and then converting it into the FPS, which is 237. So the way that we're doing it, I think, is a little easier to think about, but it's not as like stats math-y, where we're taking the full list of frame times and then we're just sorting it, and then for our 1%, we're taking the worst literal 1% of that list and averaging that together and then turning that into an FPS. If you take the 99th percentile of frame times, you get what Intel is calling the first percentile of FPS.
Which
they're
they're the ones
inverse.
that have it backwards technically. from the
Well,
way it works.
but if
FPS
you
and frame times are inversely related.
if you
so,
converted each of these into an FPS number,
they'd be
then the order of like what's, because like high frame time is bad, high FPS is good.
Yeah.
So the order is reversed. So the order of like what is the 99th percentile is flipped. So, but anyway, yeah. So all I did was do percentile 99th on the frame time column, and then I did 1,000 milliseconds divided by this
By that
equals.
number.
Yeah. So
Which
so
matches theirs.
yeah, this is what we
24
would
FPS.
have as our 1%, and that would include these spikes here.
Yeah.
Whereas this first percentile, you know, the fact that these spikes are bad affects it, but they don't directly affect what the number is. Because like if this particular spike were 10 times as big, it wouldn't change what this number is.
Yeah, which I think is a problem personally.
Yeah.
That's just like a philosophy thing. So, and this is actually something that's bothered me for a really long time with the reviews community, where we chose the terminology based on FRAFs, 1% and 0.1% lows.
Yeah, yeah.
So we kind of made that terminology popular. The way it got applied was not the same as the way we're doing the math
Yeah.
when other people started using our language. It's not our testing. I didn't invent the testing, you know, but the language is what I applied to it. And so it led to this confusion where, like, when some people are saying lows, by our definition, what they mean is percentiles. Let's do like a real sort of bench pass. Let's make this go a little faster. Let's do 40 seconds for demonstration. This is just setting stuff. I made sure dynamic resolution's off, frame generation's off, VSync's off, so that all obviously matters. That's kind of standard methodology stuff. So now what I'm gonna do is exit the application because we've changed settings.
I love that there was a hair quality setting in F1.
Is it really? I didn't see that.
Yeah, it was hair
What
quality.
a pointless
hair
setting.
effects.
Yeah.
It's a German capture.
Capture. Capture now. So the overlay disappeared,
Okay.
which is good. That's what we want.
So now you have
So if we see the overlay, it's not capturing.
Yeah, okay.
So what I'm doing right now is I'm actually quitting the benchmark and I'm going to re-enter it. And the reason is because we got what we wanted. I started right when, 3, 2, 1, when it hit green. I'm going to do that again. So that's not what we do for this test necessarily, but if I'm defining a methodology like right now, I've just defined it. Like that's what I'm doing. So I did 4 captures. That's what I was just doing there. So this is where I'm going to type the results in here. And then this is the average.
Okay, so that's gonna average out the 4 runs.
Yeah, there's some human error chance here.
That's how you're getting the frame time on your axis there the frame count is you're just replacing the application name with literally 0 through.
And you could put it anywhere you want. You could put that at the end, but yeah, I just count the frames.
Okay.
This obviously is useless.
That is a triangle.
So that's just a Google Sheets thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, charts editor setup. You've got x-axis and series, which is the other axis.
Yeah.
We're going to get rid of frame because we don't want to plot frames. And then you can make this whatever you want. It's actually pretty interesting.
Yeah.
And so one thing that's important for you to understand is this is something Scott Wasson taught me when I started doing this. This happening once is not necessarily enough to damn the card. Like, because we're talking, it looks terrible on a chart, and it's not great, but we went from 11 milliseconds
44.
to 44. And so, 16.67 times 60 is 1,000 milliseconds. So like 60 FPS is 16.7 milliseconds. Right, so we're at, is it just 1,000 divided by, I guess? So we're at, let's call it 11 before. So that's like 91 FPS. I'm doing 1,000 because it's 1,000 milliseconds in a second.
Mm-hmm.
And we're at 44 for the next frame, which is 22. So, the delta there's a 68 FPS. The whole thing's kind of silly because it's frames per second, but we're looking at a literal instant in time. It's not even a second, right?
Right.
Which is why the frame time number is ideal. So the real difference is, as a user, you're seeing 11 milliseconds all the way, and then you get 44. Well, you notice that, I mean, most people seem to notice like 8 to 12 millisecond deviations, but if this happens once, you're going to get over it. What you really need to look for is like, if you see this happen a couple times, it's maybe a problem. That's why you mentioned,
right?
You mentioned 20 games in your video. I think you should set the count lower to start with.
See, I thought that was low. I didn't realize you were doing
20
10 on
high,
average.
yeah.
Yeah, well, like Steve said, making a matrix of the settings and resolutions you want to test, I think should make it a lot more visible how many tests you're actually talking about.
Yeah, because right now we do 8, and I thought that was very, very low.
Yeah, so I mean, eight can be a lot if you're doing multiple resolutions and then potentially maybe if you want to multiple settings. For
well,
games.
then I think if 10's a solid round number, based on the amount of runs is going to be per title. Mm-hmm. We're just going to change the 10 games that we're currently running because we have a lot that need to just be sunset. They're too old to be relevant anymore.
Where do you want to focus sort of the rest of our time today? What's the most helpful to you to learn?
Probably just to see you do a run through of kind of how you capture power and sort of digest it. Do you use the PCIe slot power adapter?
Yeah.
Are you using it on a riser cable?
No, just on the motherboard.
So you just have cobbled together the taller stand to hold it?
Yeah. What the fuck? What am I looking at? Oh my god.
It's a slide.
What? This is a slide?
It slides back, towards the right side of the board.
It's like comical.
It's like squeak it too, like spring.
It's a Motel 6 lever.
Yeah.
Do we not have a way currently here to adapt that? Or I just plug it into EPS?
We were just using one of the EPS.
Yeah, we'll just do that. Okay, that is correct.
So, if you want to use the other standoffs, they're still threaded into the side of the bench table.
Do you have case standoffs? Yeah, cool. Oh yeah, longer would be... There we go.
Here you go. You can have your pick now.
That looks like what I need, yeah. Slightly too tall. A little bit taller. Yeah. Now it just needs the zip tie.
Oh,
Bit to hold the ear in. Bitte mit deinem Handes. Thank you.
There you go. Structural foam.
Yeah. How's that?
If it's not sketchy, it's not the right way.
Okay. If you're just doing GPU capture, you could also just plug EPS in straight from the power supply, which would only make it a little less confusing, because then you're not going to have like an EPS for the GPU and an EPS for the CPU.
Right.
So that's an option. It's just like disconnect that one, go to the power supply. We're definitely not at a wattage where we need both EPS though. It's like less than 170 watts under loads. What do you want to do for your actual power testing, like the stuff you show for your charts or your data? Like what software do you want to use to create the load?
Oh.
Or are you doing anything
How about
currently?
Heaven? No. And that's where we end it for the day.
Thanks for watching,
He's
guys.
gonna walk back to North Carolina. He's not gonna fly. He's just gonna Forrest Gump it back to North Carolina. He's still going. Let that be a lesson. If you ever want to know how to make Steve go away, just mention heaven. You know, one of the things that we would typically do would be like Speedway or Port Royal on a loop,
That's fine for sure.
because we want to load up the RT cores and stuff.
Definitely, those are both fine. I'm not sure how is this too lightweight?
Nomad? I'd think
Still
so.
Nomad, I think, is they said that that's supposed to be their heaviest non-ray tracing test.
Oh, okay, that would be good then.
Yeah.
For non-ray tracing?
Yeah.
For- yeah.
What I would do is open the thing, get custom run, make sure all my stuff is the same as all the other ones I'm comparing with. In this case, we're going to do looping, 4K, no other changes. Oh, that's not even a change, I don't think. So just looping is the only change. And then before I launch this, I'm going to start logging. This, I would run it for 30 minutes. It tends to be about 20 minutes. You're very likely to be at steady state, almost certainly on everything. 30 is safe.
Yeah.
Walk away, come back, and then Alt F4 when you're ready. And we'll just do that now because we have enough data to work with. So yeah, this stage, what you really want to know is like what's the average. If you want to just put them on a bar chart, so total GPU power is what we're going to call that, equals sum, and then that'll be EPS 1 and 12 volt high power. And so this is useful if you log games or something and you're trying to see at what point in the game test is it spiking or is it low.
So you can kind of get an idea, okay, we're 35 seconds into the test. We can see where we were on that track in 35 seconds, and we can correlate spikes and usage.
Yeah. So anyway, that's kind of how I'd run the power logging. The big thing is just going to be choosing the areas you want to test, doing it the same way, all that stuff. Calibrating, for like verifying your numbers, you just want something that creates a fixed and reliable load, which this is pretty good. So what we can do is just make sure Elmore's thing is reading right, and I would do this like once a year or something on the schedule. We're going to need the adapter and then PCIe. So is this all EPS that I had you?
That's all EPS.
Okay. Yeah. Since you don't have a PCIe extension, we'll just kind of demo it here. It sits in between the motherboard and the cable that you want
And
to
that's
test.
just so you can break out and easily identify which is ground, which is 12 volt.
Yeah. So the clamp, you're going to be in amps right there. This button will zero it out.
Okay.
The arrow button indicates the direction of current flow. We just clamp this. A couple things, you don't want any ground in there with it. That'll mess
Right.
up the reading. And you also don't want to coil it. So if
Okay.
it's like wrapped, then that can cause a problem. So we're zeroed out. System's not on yet, and it says 0. That's good. So what we're going to do is launch a Cinebench. And idle I wouldn't use ultimately, but yeah, same idea. It's really load where you'll see a difference.
14.3.
Yeah, and 14.2. So.
Now it says 14.4.
And they're going to be, they're on different intervals, so they won't be perfect. So if you clamp it, it's like, yeah, plus or minus 0.5, good enough.
Yeah, and that's also why even on your recommendation, going with the Fluke is worth the cost versus some cheap Amazon unit. Because I mean, like I said, when I worked in energy, Fluke's full line of measurement tools, and they're industry standard for a reason.
Yeah, you're paying for it to be calibrated.
Yeah.
And if you ever want them to, they'll certify it again. So
you were recommending though not to run these adapters full time because they
burn
up.
Yeah.
Already, just by seeing your philosophy and methodology behind even the 60-second testing, there's validity to that. Because if you asked me last week if I thought a 60-second GPU test has value, I would have said no.
Yeah, it's definitely good. The places where like duration really starts to cause problems is older CPUs where they have tau, where they have the boost window. It's like 52 seconds.
Yeah.
And then what happens is the first pass is high and the other 3 are normal.
Yeah.
And so in that situation, you get rid of the first pass and you resolved it.
We had that problem on handhelds a lot. The AMD skin temperature of whatever, STAPM. The AMD STAPM would make it
Skin
throttle after the
temperature
first
power
round.
management.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I had to go through the alphabet. No, it's a good example. STAPM's it's awful to benchmark. It's like it's benchmarking something that has, it's like random basically.
Yeah.
Like you don't know what you're gonna get when you roll a dice. Speaking of, I need to give you dice before I forget.
Oh yeah, make sure you put this on your disclosures.
Yeah.
Bias.
You know what's funny about this is I showed my daughter yesterday the snowflake ones.
Yeah.
She about lost her shit. She's like,
Oh
my God,
cool.
that's so freaking cute.
That's cool.
And then my nephew, her cousin, the only thing on his list is Dungeons and Dragons dice
Oh, cool.
and stuff. So
I brought 2 sets.
these are awesome. These are going to go well in the podcast room. I'll show you because I want to display these up there.
Yeah.
But
So that's the snowflake ones. Yeah. So and then that middle piece, you can just lift it out if you want.
magnetic and
Yeah.
everything. Look at that. Oh, okay, cool. I like the wood choices. And you have
Yeah.
3 different color grains, don't you?
It's a natural wood, so it kind of however they stain it and however long they leave the stain, it just changes the
Cut some.
color.
That's a weapon right
That
there.
is it's sharp edge.
Holy
Yeah,
cow.
they're sharp.
So I love the
obviously.
fact that you guys actually did roll measuring.
Yeah.
Because that's the first question. If there's something in the die, it's like, okay, is that gonna?
It'll affect it a little bit depending on the precise positioning, but like at the end of the day for would a casino let you use these? No. Right? But for casual play, yeah, it's fine.
But-
Check out the
the inductor ones?
Those you might think are cool just because it's like nerd stuff, but
I like the colorway on these. More like a
Yeah.
coppery.
dice with stuff in them have been around for a long time, but I have never seen one with inductors in them.
Oh, that's cool.
So that was Andrew on my team did that art, and then
That's awesome.
and the snowflake card was
Yeah.
the other one.
Yeah, I saw that creature cat.
Yeah.
X.
So anyway, we'll get more over your way though.
No, this is cool. I'm hugely appreciative of this because I feel like just seeing it in practice, although like on the surface, a lot of it makes perfect sense. Things that could have more than likely come up with on my own, but I think seeing it in practice of the way that you guys are doing it, seeing the way that you're sort of formulating the sheets, I think that's going to be the next step. Like I said, once everything becomes comfortable and second nature, is to then find a way to more efficiently export that data into the sheets.
Yeah.
Because that would be awesome if they could, I don't want to say self-populate, because anytime you rely on automation, you also can rely on errors that just formulate.
Pretty quick to just type in, especially once, I know you guys are tight on cash, but when you can afford a numpad.
Well, you know,
I'm going to keep bringing that up.
This place was really expensive, man. I can't afford another keyboard.
That's the number one efficiency improvement you can do. So
Those are not permanent, I promise. They also have the wrong 4 letters on them, so we need to change them. But
yeah. So then at this point, I think you have the right tools.
foundation.
Yeah, they're definitely the right interest, definitely the right questions. Now it's just kind of the slow iterative, like, okay, this is going to be a process, and not overwhelming yourself by trying to do everything at once.
Well, we'll get a lot of practice in preparing for the next launch cycle for GPUs because we have to get some other data in there.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's meaningless.
Right.
There's nothing to compare it to.
Yeah.
So that'll be good.
Yeah.
You know what's going to happen is you're going to leave here in 10 minutes with a phone call. Steve, can you tell me that all again?
Yeah. Wait. What was the part about Windows? What part about Windows? Yeah. No, yeah. Yeah, I mean, let me know if you need help with it. All I've really done is like, here's kind of a foundation to build your house on.
Well, like I told you on the phone 6 months ago, I don't want to recreate GN philosophies and workflow here, but having a foundation to build off of, which is what I wanted.
Yeah, that's why I was trying to lead without an answer for the things. Like if there was a multiple choice setup thing where I thought there's only one correct choice, I just told you what that choice is.
So for every question, you should have given me 3 options. 2 of them were acceptable, and 1 was just wrong. And if I ever chose the wrong one, you're like, that's it.
Yeah.
We're out of here.
Cool. Well, I'll clean up the notes I wrote and get them to you. Otherwise, I mean, it's all on your hands. So.
Yeah, I just hope the audience understands my motive for this. You know, this isn't about like trying to copy GN or whatever. It's just, you know, there's no hiding the fact that you guys have really, over the last decade especially, really sort of pioneered the newest wave of the way testing is done, you know?
Some of it, but there's a lot of people, I think, in the industry doing really good stuff. And that's what's cool about it is it's like, there's definitely things I can point to that other people are doing now where I'm like, that's cool. You know, I remember when we put that on a chart because some viewer posted a comment. And I was like, hey, you should try this. And we tried it, and like now it's everywhere. And that's in a couple places, but there's also a lot of stuff in our charts where I saw it on someone else's, and I was like, that's cool, we should do that.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's what's cool with it is it's just like...
Because the last thing I would want in the
PC tech space on YouTube is everyone's charts and numbers are just identical.
Yeah.
Everyone's is the same. That's not true
This
independent
stuff is
testing.
it's infinitely complex. There are billions of combinations for how you can test
Yeah.
the software and hardware, and the only way to really actually explore those all, where you get like every now and then someone has some big discovery that no one else saw. That only happens because of the way it's done, where it's all diverse. So, yeah, that's why I tried. Yeah, basically give you the roadmap, and then you can kind of figure it out. But
Yeah.
yeah, sweet. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, I appreciate you coming by. I mean, this was not just a quick jaunt over to the other side of the U.S.
It's pretty quick. Vitaly and I just got back from Germany, so
I
he's
guess
falling
by
asleep.
relation, it does seem a little
The
quick.
camera's about to like teeter towards the ground.
It's stabilizing itself, so I'm
Yeah.
putting myself like in a boat.
So then we did start at like 7 or so. It's 5. That's pretty good. And that's a lot of ground to cover.
Yeah.
So cool.
And keep in mind that was just GPU.
Just part of GPU.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome.
Like, I feel like right now we've just laid a big, thick concrete foundation, and you're like, dude, you built the house.
Yeah.
I just showed you how to make the ground stable.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Nah, sweet. Well, yeah, I guess check back for Jay's progress. And it's the 50 series. That's going to be the hard part.
Yeah, no
but-
pressure or anything.
But let me know what you need, and then otherwise, we'll have plenty of. I'm planning to post some methodology pieces soon on our side.
Yeah.
So probably on the website. So then, if anyone in the audience wants to check out some of the stuff I was showing Jay behind the camera over here, then we'll have some of that.
Because everything you just showed is also very useful troubleshooting methods as well.
Yeah.
People
Yeah.
can sometimes find their own answers by just understanding more how to
The
test.
process. Yeah. Cool. Thanks for having us out.
Yeah, and thanks for the bribes. I mean,
Yeah. Well, I got the 2 Red Bull cans for the team. So.
technically we got three small boxes of them. We weren't sure like how Red Bull dependent you guys were going to be, but
I was trying not to. I was like $2.50
I don't
a
judge.
can.
I don't judge. Hey, we remember the days where I was having like 4 coffees a day plus the energy drinks to stay alive, let alone
Yeah.
awake. You know.
Yeah. Well, that'll be it for the setup. I don't know how much footage we have, but you all will see probably 30 to 45 minutes of it.
At least.
So,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
only what, like I said, 7 hours
Uh-huh.
of footage that you have to go through now.
Yeah. And we'll see you all next time.